Means is that a commission decision cannot be changed by the executive or legislative branches, but a FERC decision can be challenged in court. One of the industries we regulate is the interstate transportation of natural gas. We also regulate non-federal hydropower, electric rates, and oil rates, but neither the siting of electric power lines nor the siting of oil pipelines. So, for those of you who ask, no, FERC does not regulate Keystone. We also don't regulate the exploration, production, or gathering of natural gas or the local distribution of natural gas. Those activities are regulated by the states. So, for example, I've heard comments about hydraulic fracturing, what other people call fracking, as that's an exploration and production method. That is not regulated by the FERC. That is regulated by the states. If you have concerns about fracking, please contact your state representatives. Our agency is directed by 5 commissioners who are appointed by the President of the United States and confirmed by Congress. It's always 3 people from the party in power, so we have 3 Democrats. The Democrats are our chairman, Norman Bay, and Commissioner Honorable and Commissioner LaFleur. And we have 2 Republicans. They are Commissioner Clark and Commissioner Moeller. Tonight, what I'd like to accomplish is the following. I'd like to summarize the project very briefly, explain the role of the FERC in the review of the project, outline how the public may participate in the process, and allow you, the public, an opportunity to voice your concerns about the project at this forum so we can consider your concerns.
My name is Nan Gray, N-A-N-G-R-A-Y. I'm a licensed professional soil scientist and a number of other things. But I'd like to point out why I'm here tonight, and it has to do with this map of Sinking Creek Valley. I live in Craig County. I'd like to point out that the Great Eastern Continental Divide comes along Brush Mountain, then up along Sinking Creek Mountain, comes around to Johns Creek Mountain, then back here to Salt Pond Mountain and over to Potts Mountain. And that's a long route for the Great Eastern Continental Divide. If the pipeline comes through the alternative route, it cuts the Great Eastern Continental Divide 1, 2, 3, 4, and probably 5 times. Sinking Creek Valley is one of 2 raised valleys in Virginia. Burke's Garden is the other raised valley. We all know that that is a wetland, and it has very diverse plants and unique plants. Sinking Creek Valley is karst in the middle, and it is, not only does it have its own water storage, all that karst is full of water. It is a water source. If that pipeline cuts through the Great Eastern Continental Divide in all those ways, it's going to impact the water going to the Atlantic, it's going to impact the water going to the Gulf of Mexico 5 different times. This is a bad siting simply because they chose a fold in the mountains where the Great Eastern Continental Divide follows the ridge back and forth. If they move one way or another, they're less likely to cross the Great Eastern Continental Divide watershed that many times. Really, what they ought to do is either have all the pipeline go west of the mountains or east of the mountains. For instance, on Johns Creek Mountain, we're talking an elevation of about 3,600 feet. For Sinking Creek Mountain, we're talking about 3,800 feet. Now, the valley on Johns Creek is quite a bit lower. Sinking Creek Valley is 2,200 feet elevation, and Craig's Creek to the east is low also. As I said, Sinking Creek Valley is a raised, perched valley. Newcastle is the recipient of centuries of debris flows from Johns Creek and also Craig's Creek and Meadow Creek off the front of Sinking Creek Mountain. And I thank you again. I think my time's up.
Thank you.
My name is Louisa Gay, Louisa Gay. I live in Blacksburg, I believe at mile marker 219. I live in between the Slusher's Chapel and the Old Mill conservation sites. In our neighborhood, we know the carbonate aquifer must be managed as a sustainable water supply because it is the only water supply available for our residences and farms. That said, pipeline construction activities such as trenching, blasting, compaction due to large machinery, deforestation, and runoff will modify natural drainage patterns, resulting in settling, increased subsidence, and sinkholes. In a report to FERC from the Commonwealth of Virginia's Department of Conservation and Recreation, dated April 17, they recommended against routing pipelines through the sensitive karst conservation sites in both Giles and Montgomery counties. Because I live between Slusher's Chapel and Mill Creek, I will focus on those two conservation sites. Slusher's Chapel is a conservation site of third-order significance. It contains a state-listed endangered species, Ellet Valley millipede, Pseudotremia cavanarium. The conservation site protects cave and karst-associated element occurrences, including 2 state-designated significant caves. The conservation site boundaries include the land overlying the caves and the watershed of the cave streams as determined by dye trace studies and topographic analysis. 6 additional caves are documented within these conservation sites. The 2 significant caves are Slusher's Chapel Cave and the Mill Creek Cave. 3 cave limited terrestrial invertebrate species and 2 aquatic invertebrate species are known from the site. 3 of these species are globally very rare, and Slusher's Chapel Cave is the locality for one of these species. Rare bats are also known in Slusher's Chapel Cave. 3 kilometers of the MVP proposed line will pass over the sinkhole plain of Slusher's Chapel Conservancy. The Old Mill is a conservation site also of third-order significance, and the Mill Creek Cave has the same invertebrates as Slusher's Chapel. And it also has a globally rare troglodytic beetle. The MVP proposed line crosses for 1.5 kilometers over this site. In the proceedings of the Second Appalachian Karst Symposium in 2004, they stated dye traces in Montgomery County documented hydrological connections in the Mount Tabor Karst northeast of Blacksburg to both the Slusher's Chapel Cave and the Mill Creek Cave. Dyes injected in Dry Run, which is a sinking creek, northeast of that area, emerged also at the Mill Creek downstream. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Richard Caywood. I'm the Assistant County Administrator for Roanoke County, and the comments I'm offering tonight are the official comments of Roanoke County. On April 28th of 2015, the Roanoke County Board of Supervisors passed a resolution to petition the FERC to delay the proposed June 16th scoping comment period by an additional 90 days and to also petition FERC to hold a formal scoping public hearing in Roanoke County. These requests were made for the following reasons. While the project's routing for the northern portion of the project in West Virginia appears to be clearly established with significant detail, that is not the case with the southern portion of the corridor in the Roanoke Valley. Impacts to Roanoke could more than double if one or more of the recently announced alternative routes are chosen. In fact, only a small portion of the proposed route within Roanoke County has been consistent since the original routing was proposed. There is also essentially no publicly available information on the proposed Swan compressor station to be located in our region, other than a very low-resolution map included with the FERC Notice of Intent and very brief references in FERC filings. The FERC map indicates 2 possible locations for this station within Roanoke County. On page 48 of Draft Resource Report number 10, MVP indicates, and I'm paraphrasing, we haven't decided where the compressor station will be located or even where the line will be located in this region, so we'll let FERC know when we've made our formal FERC application in October. How can Roanoke County or its citizens make an informed evaluation and comment intelligently on what may be a very significant impact to our citizens and to the environment with this level of information? This level of ambiguity and lack of information is in stark contrast to the detailed information provided about 3 similar compressor stations in West Virginia. Quite simply, Roanoke County does not believe that sufficient work has been done and communicated to interested parties in the southern portion of the corridor for FERC to close the scoping process on June 16th. In addition, there's more than 200,000 people in the Roanoke Valley and almost 100,000 in Roanoke County. Tonight's hearing is over an hour driving time for some of the residents directly impacted by the project, and even further for other interested residents. Therefore, and particularly based on the crowds tonight, it's clear that there's many more people who would like to speak if they can speak tonight, so we would also ask that there be another hearing in Roanoke County. Finally, I'd like to share two specific environmental concerns for the county. The first regards our karst geology that's very complex and sensitive watersheds and sensitive water supply. We believe that much of the route in our area will require blasting or very heavy mechanical rock removal, and most likely both to achieve the sufficient depth on our steep mountain terrain. We believe that this poses a substantial risk to water resources, and this should be very carefully evaluated. Finally, our area is very heavily forested and very beautiful, and we rent over 1.1 million hotel nights a year in the Roanoke Valley. We believe the construction of the pipeline would be very visible on a permanent basis since the land will not be able to be reforested. Therefore, we would request a detailed visual analysis of view sheds from the Blue Ridge Parkway, Appalachian Trail, and other sensitive areas, and this should be required to be made available to the public for review and comment. And we'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present the county's comments.
My name is David Perry, D-A-V-I-D-P-E-R-R-Y, and I'm the Executive Director of the Blue Ridge Land Conservancy. The Mountain Valley Pipeline is proposed to cross 4 properties protected with conservation easements held by the Blue Ridge Land Conservancy. The properties are the Coalbank Ridge property in Montgomery County, the Higginbotham property in Roanoke County, and the Garst and Prettyman properties on Cahays Mountain in Franklin County. These easements protect important environmental resources that have been identified by local governments, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the federal government as worthy of protection from the kind of commercial and industrial development and ecological disturbance associated with the construction of the proposed Mountain Valley Pipeline. Lands protected with conservation easements are incompatible with the 42-inch natural gas transmission pipeline. I want to share with you just a few of the many environmental impacts of this proposed pipeline on these lands. Under your category of geology and soils, for example, the Coalbank Ridge property in Montgomery County is composed entirely of karst geology as identified by the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation. Alternate Route 87 crosses this property from end to end. Vegetation and wildlife. Water from the Higginbotham property flows into the Bottom Creek Gorge, which contains 3 rare fish and 1 globally rare plant. Silt and sediment from any potential pipeline construction on the Higginbotham property would negatively impact water quality in Bottom Creek to the detriment of these species. A visual example. Motorists and bicyclists who recreate along the Blue Ridge Parkway and US 220 would have their enjoyment lessened by the visual impact of the proposed Mountain Valley Pipeline running down the length of Cahays Mountain and through the Garst and Prettyman properties. Cahays Mountain is the highest peak in Franklin County and has its own overlook along the Blue Ridge Parkway. The 125-foot wide unvegetated pipeline clearcut down the spine of forested Cahays Mountain would create a major visual impact on the landscape from both the Blue Ridge Parkway and US 220. Finally, air quality. 3 of the properties protected by conservation easements that are proposed to be crossed by the Mountain Valley Pipeline are located in the Roanoke Valley. These properties are either entirely or partially forested. In the Roanoke Valley, traffic within the valley and that passing on I-81 and U.S. highways releases emissions into the air that, due to the valley's unique geography, tend to remain trapped in the valley. These emissions contribute to high ground-level ozone layers in the summer and high particulate matter pollution in the colder months. In 2003, the Roanoke Valley Metropolitan Statistical Area was required by the EPA to enter agreements and establish a plan to reduce ozone pollution in the Roanoke Valley. Permanent elimination of the potential for trees along the pipeline route on these conserved properties would hinder the efforts of citizens, NGOs, and local governments to meet federal mandates for clean air. We're trying to add trees, not remove them. For these reasons and many more, the Mountain Valley Pipeline should not cross any lands protected by conservation easements.
I'm Linda Ferris, L-I-N-D-A-P-H-A-R-I-S. Welcome back, Mr. Friedman and FERC staff, to our beautiful region, which is not just our backyard, it's the nation's backyard. We hold, as Blue Ridge Land Conservancy, a conservation easement on Bent Mountain in Roanoke County, which is known, David has spoken of it, the Higginbotham property, which rates very high, 4 out of 5, on the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation's agricultural model for open space. This model particularly notes prime agricultural soils on this land. This conserved property rated outstanding on the Department of Conservation and Recreation's Ecological Cores Model. The Ecological Cores Model rates the contribution of an area to ecosystem service values of cleaning air and filtering water, harboring plant and animal species, and thereby containing libraries of genetic information from which new foods, materials, and medical compounds are derived. Water from the Higginbotham property flows into Bottoms Creek Gorge, which is a popular destination for whitewater canoeists and kayakers. A pipeline through this property would ruin the water quality and recreational experience for people from all over this region and beyond. The conservation easements that protect 4 properties proposed to be crossed by the Mountain Valley Pipeline support the comprehensive plans for the counties of Roanoke, Franklin, and Montgomery. In their comprehensive plans, these are designated lands for conservation, forest land, and agriculture. Placing a 42-inch natural gas pipeline would run counter to the comprehensive plans approved for these counties. For these reasons and many more, which have been filed by Blue Ridge Land Conservancy on the FERC website, we ask that the Mountain Valley Pipeline not cross any lands protected by conservation easements.
Good evening. I'm Rupert Cutler of Roanoke. That's R-U-P-E-R-T-C-U-T-L-E-R. I am the president of the Blue Ridge Land Conservancy. The Conservancy achieves its land conservation goals by holding conservation easements on tracts of undeveloped private farm and forest land and municipal parkland. By restricting development, these easements protect prime farm and forest land for food and fiber production, protect important municipal watersheds to maintain drinking water quality, save scenic views from the Blue Ridge Parkway and the Appalachian Trail, important fish and wildlife habitats, and historic sites for future generations. The Conservancy operates in the counties of Bedford, Botetourt, Craig, Floyd, Franklin, Montgomery, and Roanoke, and currently protects more than 16,000 acres by means of perpetual conservation easements. The Conservancy's bylaws state that it is organized to, among other things, encourage and assist local, state, and federal government agencies in the preservation, conservation, and wise management of the region's cultural and natural assets. Given this purpose, the organization's board of directors voted in November of 2014 to go on record as being opposed to the Mountain Valley Pipeline crossing the Blue Ridge Parkway, the Appalachian National Scenic Trail, and statutory wilderness areas in the Jefferson National Forest, such as the Brush Mountain and Brush Mountain East wildernesses in Montgomery and Craig counties. National parks are established to preserve their natural and cultural values in an unimpaired state. The Blue Ridge Parkway is the most visited unit of the National Park System, and its relatively natural condition, with many views and pastoral farm and forest land, serves as an important regional economic driver through its ecotourism appeal, as well as an important reservoir of native plants and animals. Those values should not be impaired by the earth moving associated with pipeline construction and by the visible presence of a wide cleared pipeline right-of-way. Units of the National Trails System, including the Appalachian Trail, are administered under the National Trails System Act to promote the preservation of the open-air, outdoor areas, and historic resources of the nation. The AT also serves as an important regional economic driver and outdoor recreation assets. Its presence here contributes to the residents' sense of place and to its appeal to residents and visitors alike. Again, views of this unique footpath should not be degraded by pipeline construction and miles of highly visible right-of-way clearing through the adjacent forest. Areas classified by the United States Congress as wilderness under the terms of the Wilderness Act of 1964 are to be kept with their wilderness character intact, untrammeled by man. Surely the construction of a 42-inch gas pipeline through or in close proximity to the Brush Mountain East, or any other statutory wilderness would be in violation of the intent of that act of Congress and subsequent acts creating those wilderness areas. Thank you.
Bondurant. I live on Bent Mountain in Roanoke County. Our water is a necessity. The pipeline, one of the proposed alternatives, will traverse through the Catawba area of Roanoke County and continue east through Roanoke County, dangerously close to Spring Hollow Reservoir. It'll then blast up the back of 3,928-foot Poor Mountain, which in some places has a greater than 50% slope. Poor Mountain joins Bent Mountain as part of the Blue Ridge Plateau, home to Bottom Creek, Mill Creek, and thousands of acres of upland streams, springs, and wetlands, which are the watershed to Franklin County's Blackwater River to the east, Montgomery County's New River to the southwest, and the Roanoke River to the north. The Nature Conservancy's Bottom Creek Gorge and Preserve, only a handful of miles from the proposed path, are among those places at high risk. I have written about the fragile and endangered species that abide in Bottom Creek and on Poor Mountain, and you'll hear more of that from Roanoke County Administration, I believe. As a Tier 3 stream designated by the state of Virginia, Bottom Creek's aquatic communities and environmental settings are deemed exceptional. The construction phase of this pipeline would disrupt bedrock aquifers, divert springs, destroying wetlands that serve as natural filters for runoff. Construction would result in erosion, sedimentation, and consequent turbidity, especially during wet periods. The pipeline crossing the plateau of Bent Mountain would permanently pull water from nearby springs, wetlands, and residential wells. The toxins from the pipe itself, application of chemicals to maintain vegetation, and disrupted wetlands would all damage a pristine and nationally protected stream and its surrounding ecosystem. I'm here because I'm a citizen of Bent Mountain. I consider myself a directly affected citizen because I share the water resource and an obligation to protect it with everybody in this room. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm Dr. Virginia Wise. I live on Bottom Creek Road in Bent Mountain. I'm very concerned about several aspects of the proposed pipeline, which should come very close to my property on Bottom Creek Road near Rocky Road in Roanoke County. The first is the risk to health and safety. The risk of groundwater contamination at the headwaters, which is where we live, to the entire area, soil contamination, methane leaks, and the possibility of massive explosions in our pristine area are all significant risks. These are not outweighed by the benefits, which we have not seen in this local area. The pipeline is proposed to go through our area with no natural gas coming to our region. The benefits seem to be only to those entrepreneurs who are attempting to make large amounts of money at our expense. We do not believe the exaggerated claims of jobs and money to the region as well. This is where you come in. Your charge, as I understand it, is to protect the public from environmental risks and to weigh those risks and benefits. The scope of this is formidable. There is no place for eminent domain to be used without benefit to the local community. The farmers in my area could not use large areas of their land. This is their livelihood if this is invoked. We pay taxes on this land. These entrepreneurs do not. This is the stuff for which the Revolutionary War was fought. We appeal to you to protect our beautiful land and our interests from those who seek only to destroy large areas of it for money. Thank you for listening.
My name is Stephen Bienstock, S-T-E-V-E-N, B-I-E-N-S-T-O-C-K. I am an affected landowner. I live in the Coalbank Ridge subdivision, lot number 36. First, I would like to comment on the issue of safety. routing a 42-inch high-pressure natural gas pipeline between two residential neighborhoods on the north end of the town of Blacksburg, as alternate Route 87 does, is unconscionable and dangerous in the extreme. It places many people and their homes in grievous danger. History shows that high-pressure pipelines do explode. Therefore, you must take no action on the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Second, allowing the construction of a pipeline project whose only goal is financial gain for EQT and NextEra executives and stockholders is wrong. There is existing access to natural gas throughout this region. This pipeline is a high-pressure transmission line not designed to provide natural gas for this region. Therefore, you must take no action on the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Lastly, if you care at all about the Earth, you will heed these words that Chief Seattle wrote in 1854 to President Pierce when the Native Americans of the Northwest were being moved from their lands and onto reservations. In part, I quote, "Every part of this earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every clearing and every humming insect is holy in the memory and experience of my people. The sap which courses through the trees carries the memories of the red man. This we know. All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons of the earth. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. Continue to contaminate your bed, and you will one night suffocate in your own waste," unquote. If you are people of conscience who care about the safety of your fellow man and ultimately about the preservation of this planet, you must take no action on the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Respectfully submit.
FLYNN. I'm a property owner on Coal Bank Ridge Homeowners Association. I'm a director of the association and treasurer. The board of directors of the Coal Bank Ridge Homeowners Association of Blacksburg, Virginia represents our neighborhood comprised of 30 homes, 22 undeveloped parcels, and a land trust conservation easement. Alternate Route 87 passes through approximately 6,400 linear feet of our conservation easement. On April 21st, a quorum of homeowners passed a motion by unanimous vote to officially oppose the location of MVP's pipeline in our conservation easement. When it comes to conservation easements, that is, at least it's supposed to be, a contract with the state of Virginia to preserve and not develop that area. In fact, the grantor of the conservation easement has to give up their development rights as part of the agreement. The conservation easement was to establish a perpetual green space for the remainder of the area and to preserve one of the historic mining areas in Montgomery County. This particular section of Coal Bank Hollow is unique due to the fact that AEP easement is within the conservation easement. The conservation easement for the pipeline would not be able to stay within the already existing AEP easement, and many conditions of that easement from tree cutting and commercial development would have to be shredded in order to proceed with the route. There are many arguments for and against the pipeline, but the argument that is specific to this route is that it goes through a conservation easement. If the state ends up claiming eminent domain to take utilities, private or public, through a conservation easement that is not totally within the already existing utility easement, then what does that say about the integrity of the state of Virginia and its pre-existing commitments? The proposed route directly crosses our entrance and egress for the Coal Bank neighborhood. The pipeline-related accident in this area would isolate 52 parcels and emergency vehicles and prevent access for fire and rescue. 28 of our homes and 22 of our undeveloped parcels are within a blast zone of approximately 1,200 feet. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Kirk Bowers. I am from Charlottesville, Virginia. I am the Pipeline Committee Chair for the Sierra Club. I represent all of our state members, 16,000 people. I'm a licensed professional engineer. Last night I talked about the need for gas and pipelines, and I think FERC's going to have a very hard time justifying the necessity and the need for these pipelines due to a number of current economic conditions that are occurring at this very moment. Tonight I want to talk briefly about landslides and seismic hazards. Numerous hazards are landslide potentials in the mountainous regions in the state of Virginia. The likelihood of these soils to become unstable during or after construction is considerably high. Pipeline activities such as trenching along slopes and equipment on unstable surfaces increases the risk of landslides. The type of soils we have in these mountainous areas is very susceptible to landslides. Thorough slope analysis and stability analysis, just like in any engineering project that I do, should be performed on all these steep slopes over 20% in grade. The main objective of slopes of stability is finding those endangered areas and identifying potential failure mechanisms, determination of the slope sensitivity to different triggering mechanisms, primarily due to construction activities. Seismic hazards in Virginia are a real source of danger to pipelines. Earthquakes are much more frequent than most people realize in Virginia. The magnitude 5.8 event in August of 2011 in Louisa County, Virginia, brought public and political attention to the Central Virginia seismic zone. I was there that day. I felt the ground shake. I saw people running from their houses yelling, "Earthquake, earthquake." This happens. In fact, since 1977, we've had 170 earthquakes in the state. That comes to 1 per month, and 2 are felt every year. Pipeline failures due to earthquakes and unstable slopes can have catastrophic effects to the public. It's extremely important to maintain the integrity of these pipelines at all costs. They could rupture under these conditions. We would like to say in conclusion, the Sierra Club is opposed to all pipelines. There will be no pipelines in this state as far as we're concerned, and we're going to be very careful in our reviews of these draft impact environmental statements. Thank you for your time.
My name is Ray Roberts, R-O-B-E-R-T-S. I am from Blacksburg, Virginia. My sister is a citizen of Craig County and lives in the county and has an affected property. We are on 110J routing for the pipeline. She lives in a house that was built in 1827. It's standing just maybe 100 yards from the pipeline. It would be in the blast zone. It is actually the starting site of Addison Caldwell, the first student to walk to Virginia Tech. It's a historical site. On the property is an African-American cemetery that the pipeline goes right through the middle of. And further back, on one of the back properties, are Civil War sites, standing CSA stones that I've traced back to Virginia Civil War soldiers that will be destroyed by this pipeline. I'm not quite sure. We're on 110J, which crosses at 42. It's an alternate route. I think all the routing that I've seen so far does not take into consideration the possibility of using existing right-of-ways that seem like a logical alternative for any sort of a pipeline, and then doubling up Dominion and maybe even Mountain Valley into one existing right-of-way that does not affect private properties the way it's going right now. It seems like we're falling back on a straight line philosophy and damaging historical properties. I am of the Saponi tribe. My great-grandmother is full-blood Saponi Indian. My sister is a member of the Lakota Sioux tribe. We are members of this valley. We're only here for a few seconds in time, and this pipeline is threatening to damage and destroy those properties, so we need to really think of that. I read through the Virginia Constitution, and the Virginia Constitution clearly states that you should not grant eminent domain rights to private corporations that can make profits from that eminent domain right. And I don't understand how the federal government, through FERC, can come in and grant this right to Mountain Valley Pipeline to come through our properties.
Good evening. My name is Sue Crenshaw, and I'm speaking on behalf of Preserve Craig Incorporated. Preserve Craig Incorporated is a 501c3 nonprofit organization formed in 1991 using volunteers and donations to protect our natural, historical, and cultural resources. We have collected to date 1,221 citizen signatures in addition to 871 electronic signatures in opposition to the survey for and construction of the Mountain Valley Pipeline. We already know that the U.S. Forest Service denied a similar request for a power line to cross the region in 1995, and the reasons for that decision are as important today as ever. We already know that proposed pipeline routes will pass through and disrupt the most important habitats on Earth for the federally endangered James spiny mussel. We already know the proposed routes will be visible from the Appalachian Trail and will likely scar the most important views from Dragon's Tooth. We already know that the proposed routes go through areas designated by the U.S. Forest Service as unsuitable for pipelines, including black bear habitat. We already know the proposed routes will further fragment wilderness areas that the Forest Service has invested in protecting. We already know the proposed routes cross steep, unstable slopes and unstable karst geology and will affect the quality of both groundwater and surface water. We already know the proposed routes will remove forest cover that protects critical water resources on both public and private lands. We already know the proposed routes will destroy conservation easements, streamside buffers, wildlife habitat restoration projects, and other long-standing conservation efforts created by concerned private citizens in collaboration with state and federal agencies, land conservancies, and other dedicated conservation entities. We already know the proposed routes will disturb nesting bald eagles in the Johns Creek watershed, the only resident nesting eagles in Craig County. We already know the proposed routes will affect the cultural sense of place for Craig County citizens, and the visual scar of the pipeline corridor will affect current and future generations. And that point is worth repeating. The proposed routes will affect the cultural sense of place for Craig County residents. The pipeline will provide for no local energy access, and the reduction in property values will far exceed landowner compensation. The pipeline will provide no benefit to this region and will endanger health, the natural resources, the water quality, the cultural values, tourism, property values, and citizen safety. We ask that FERC take all actions necessary to protect our land, our rights, and our welfare by opposing this and any other transmission pipeline through Craig County. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Domino. I represent the 100-member Black Diamond Property Owners Association in Craig County, where Alt 110 is proposed to cross Johns Creek. The Appalachian Mountain Range, for thousands of years home to one of the longest contiguous forests on Earth, remains a haven of biodiversity even today. MVP's alternate 110 route through Monroe, Craig, and Roanoke counties would threaten that biodiversity. In particular, the Alt 110 route directly endangers the primary known habitat of the James River spiny mussel, added to the list of endangered species in 1988. The spiny mussel has been eliminated from over 90% of its historic range, though in recent years, a small population was discovered in the Dan River. Unfortunately, in 2014, 39,000 tons of coal ash spilled into the Dan, contaminating 70 miles of river habitat. This, in spite of assurances of mitigation measures and best management practices that the company responsible for that coal ash likely asserted. Now, EQT Corporation, a company with a history of environmental promises unkept, wants us to believe they can cut a wide swath and excavate a deep trench through the heart of the remaining spiny mussel habitat and not endanger that species or any other. The spiny mussel is known to require clean, unsilted water, because like most freshwater mussels, it's a filter feeder. It's known to exist in Potts Creek, Little Oregon Creek, Johns Creek, Dix Creek, and Craig Creek. What all these creeks have in common is that construction of the pipeline along Alt 110 would not only cross each creek, but also create siltation in the watershed of each creek, including along the 1-mile stretch of Little Oregon, Dix, and Johns Creek in Craig County, the best known population of the species. The mussel recovery plan prepared by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service specifically noted that siltation from construction is a significant factor contributing to water quality problems and the consequent decline of the spiny mussel. These mussels are sedentary, and they're unable to move long distances to avoid heavy silt. EQT and NextEra are also likely sedentary. But they can move the pipeline route to avoid the Johns Creek and Craig Creek watersheds due to their importance to the conservation and recovery of this species. You know, that sounds like such a good idea that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recently told MVP's environmental contractor exactly that. Move this pipeline route. Will the FERC follow the recommendation of the federal government's own experts? Or will the FERC assure us that mitigation and best management practices will protect Monroe, Craig, and Roanoke, just like they protected the Dan River?
Tammy Belinsky, Tammybelinsky. My home is within 3 miles of the proposed crossing over the Blue Ridge Parkway. And I'm also working in my legal capacity with Preserve Craig to stop this greedy madness. I went to college in 1979 to study environmental science, and based on what I learned about energy consumption, I decided when I was 18 years old that I would not have children. There's no future in it. And unfortunately, it's activities like this that make me right. MVP wants to steal our land, pollute our water, fracture our communities, degrade our quality of life, and our relationships to our land, all for corporate profit. These are all significant issues. But here's what's really significant. There's no evidence that any of these impacts can be mitigated under the environmental conditions that exist in this geographic region. In my world, MVP is a joint venture of thugs and bandits, and FERC is aiding and abetting their crime spree, unless and until it is proved that mitigation works. We're mitigating ourselves to death. And the lack of evidence that impacts to water, wildlife, and our quality of life can be mitigated is a significant issue that needs to be analyzed. In the short time remaining, I'm raising one more issue, and that is that until the MVP pipeline was proposed, may not have been caught in your crosshairs. MVP has run into a hornet's nest here in Southwest Virginia. And the legal scholar in me believes that before this is all over, the intersection of the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution and the federal power of eminent domain will also be a significant issue.
BRENT-RILEY, and I just have a couple of brief points to make, the reasons that I think we're putting the cart before the horse. We have yet to have a public policy discussion on the wisdom of putting large quantities of natural gas onto our domestic market or the exportation abroad, which seems a logical extension of multiple pipelines coming in the future. Also, because fracking chemicals are proprietary secrets, the public is unable to make an educated evaluation of the propriety of this whole concept. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sam Easterling, E-A-S-T-E-R-L-I-N-G. My wife and I live in Craig County. and are effective landowners. We live in the Black Diamond development along Johns Creek in the community of Maggie. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Preserve Craig and the Black Diamond Property Owners Association, for which I serve as a member of the Board of Directors. I'd like to primarily address alternate routes and means of delivering natural gas. In the FERC's letter dated 13 March 2015 to Mr. Paul Deal, Senior Counsel for Equitrans, that provided comments on first draft resource reports 1 and 10, critical requests are made in the context of alternate route consideration under the heading, quote, Draft Resource Report 10-Alternatives, end quote. Items 1 through 5 in this section collectively request information on analyses related to alternate route consideration, co-location within existing utility easements, and potential co-location with other proposed pipeline systems in the region. I respectfully request in the strongest possible way that the FERC demand a thorough and exhaustive response to these items. If a cursory review and response is allowed to occur, then I would argue that the MVP and its partners should be deemed non-responsive and appropriately held accountable by the FERC. When one looks at the location where the gas is being extracted in north-central West Virginia, along with the biological diversity footprint of the Appalachian region along the West Virginia-Virginia border, an obvious route for consideration appears. As unpalatable as it is to suggest that you look elsewhere, that's indeed what you asked to do in the NOI. Taking an almost due easterly heading, albeit tracking a bit to the northeast, a route along the Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland borders would be both more direct in tying into existing north-south pipelines and would avoid the fragile and biologically diverse habitat of the Appalachian Range along the West Virginia-Virginia border. Protecting this high-value ecosystem must be of paramount consideration. I also request that the FERC require a comprehensive evaluation of a no-build alternative that would actually bring significant positive impact to the region, positive economic impact to the region. That alternative is to consider moving the gas by rail. This approach is somewhat in its infancy in the United States, has both significant positive and negative issues, but should not be summarily dismissed without a thorough, independent evaluation. While not commonplace in the United States today, liquefied natural gas will be transported in the very near future in Alaska by rail. This alternative provides the real opportunity, as opposed to the practically unreal opportunity suggested by the MVP literature, to provide access to natural gas in many parts of West Virginia and Virginia not currently served. The rail infrastructure exists today, and thus the ability to transport LNG while requiring new gas processing infrastructure is much more readily available and thus would not require extensive additional new pipelines that adversely affect thousands of people. I don't pretend to have all the answers regarding the overall economic analysis for this option. I do know that moving the gas by rail would positively impact thousands of people, their homes, and land along the MVP route, as well as... Thank you.
Martha Murphy. Last name is spelled M-U-R-P-H-Y. I am a member of the Craig County Board of Supervisors, and I'm also an affected landowner in the Sinking Creek area on the alternate 110 route. The comments that I'm going to make tonight, they're both very brief, but they are my personal comments. First, I'd like to ask a request of the FERC to schedule at least one scoping meeting in Craig County, and also to extend the scoping period in order to do so. Asking residents and stakeholders, many of them who do not have access to internet in their homes, to drive an 80-mile round trip to an evening, weeknight evening to participate and have their voices heard is woefully inadequate and unacceptable. The many hundreds of landowners who live along the 22-mile alternate route 110 that bisects Craig County, they deserve more than this if they're going to participate in the process. Secondly, I'd like to ask on behalf of the 5,000 residents in Craig County that the FERC spend a significant amount of time at this moment in history, stop the process, slow it down, and really complete, among other things, a viable economic analysis of the true costs and the benefits of this and other projects that you might be considering. Who is truly paying the costs and who's receiving the benefit? I ask you to work with the landowners, the stakeholders, and listen to them to determine the real value of the non-tangible assets in which these local communities have already heavily invested. Since the 110 routes were listed as an alternate route for the survey only in this February of this year, Craig County has seen And it's just one example, an abrupt halt of residential construction and improvements projects throughout the county. Home and property sales have also declined drastically. Everything is on hold in our county. Property taxes make up an overwhelming majority in our county, of our county revenue. And for that reason, I really, the way I see it, the true environmental and social costs of this project are borne by the landowners and the smaller communities. This is supposedly for public good, a project like this, but in reality, we're feeling and we know that it is for corporate profit. If eminent domain is going to facilitate these corporate windfalls, then private citizens who have their rights and property taken need to be truly and justly compensated. At a minimum in Craig County, this pipeline will devalue, jeopardize almost 6,000 acres, and that's just the blast zone alone.
Thank you very much. My name is Gene Seago, S-E-A-G-O, and Mountain Valley Pipeline covets my property. I mean, that Route 110J would go right through the middle of it. And that's kind of hard for me to deal with. I think that the government can take my property for, it should be based on for the public good, but I have trouble finding that. I see where a few groups will benefit from it, such as people who live south of here and might get cheap gas. And while you say that the Mountain Valley Pipeline will not be exported, that's because they hadn't applied for it yet, but I'd anticipate someday they will. So I see, I mean, the reason, Mountain Valley Pipeline wants my property, not the same reason why I acquired it, that is for its natural beauty, but rather to look like Sherman's March to the Sea running through my property when they do their construction. So I see the benefits going for a few people, and the burden all falling on the people living in the local area, and I'm concerned about safety. And we talk about a 75 or 125 foot easement, but you got a 2,000 foot impact zone, and who wants to live within the impact zone? So that's going to affect property values, and on the public safety business, we hear about a few pipeline explosions, but I was shocked to see that the federal government published in 2012 that there were 80 pipeline explosions with damage of excess of $50,000. So it is a real hazard. And that hazard is going to affect property values. And you wonder about whether you'll be able to get insurance in the future. So what I'm at, in a final analysis, this is going to be a weighting of benefits and burdens. And I think the Mountain Valley Pipeline should definitely be able to prove the excess of benefits over burdens. And it's easy to measure your benefits in terms of dollars or cubic feet or BTUs or whatever. But these other intangibles, the impact on people's lives, are not so easily to quantify. But they definitely have to be considered in reaching this decision. Thank you.
F-R-E-D-L-A-L-A-N-D-E. I am a landowner on alternate 93 presenting my safety and environmental concerns regarding the proposed MVP route in the high-density sinkhole area. To document these concerns, I am referring to a report by the Commonwealth of Virginia Departments of Mines, Minerals, and Energy titled Selected Karst Features in the Central Valley and Ridge Province, Virginia. In this report, a complete sinkhole and cave map of Montgomery County was compiled, along with the risk associated with sinkholes. Focusing on the Mount Tabor area, the map shows one of the highest sinkhole concentration in Southwest Virginia. The sinkhole density reaches its peak at the foot of Brush Mountain along the MVP route. From this government map, I counted a dozen sinkholes along the original route and no less than 24 sinkholes within 200 feet of alternate 93. This is an active sinkhole area. There is a recent 75-foot sinkhole less than 100 feet from alternate 93. On my property alone are 2 sinkholes, making it impossible for MVP to avoid disturbing them. In this same report, the Commonwealth of Virginia warns of the many hazards associated with karst terrain. These are direct quotes from the potential karst hazards section of the report that are directly relevant to the risk of pipeline construction. Quote, even the best conceived building project alters the equilibrium of the landscape. Ground surfaces are disturbed and artificial surfaces are introduced. Increases in runoff are generated from artificial surfaces and defoliated areas, end of quote. Quote, pollution of groundwater resources is an ever-present problem in karst area. Sinkholes represent points of input to the groundwater system, end of quote. Quote, flooding problem in karst terrains can result from 2 man-made conditions: the plugging of natural drains during construction and increase in runoff due to the artificial surfaces, end of quote. Based on these documented safety, health, and environmental risk, it is clear that the current proposed route from MVP in Montgomery County are unacceptable and should be promptly rejected. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Adrian Sandu, SANDU. I live at 1430 Breckenridge Drive in Blacksburg. The proposed route of the pipe passes through my land, and the word corridor associated with it passes through my house. The proposed pipeline crosses the populous Preston Forest and Brush Mountain neighborhoods. According to the GIS data, the construction zone along the original route directly affects 10 homes on the south side of the power line and 9 on the north side. The construction along the alternate Route 87 affects between 1 and 10 houses, depending on the location. The construction along the alternate Route 93 directly affects 10 to 12 houses. Twice as many homes are located within another 100 feet from the edge of the construction zone. We, who are very close to the proposed route, have safety concerns. The construction has to take out multiple roads in the neighborhood, and if you look on the map, you will see that this will cut off access to many homes. How will we deal with fire emergencies, with medical emergencies, and so on? We have health concerns. The houses in our neighborhood have wells, so we depend on the groundwater. Chemicals from the filling material, possible leakages, will impact our water quality. In addition, the plant compressor stations would lead to a permanent state of noise pollution. We have safety concerns related to damages to our homes. Our neighborhoods are built on karstic terrain. The very heavy equipment used in close proximity to our houses will damage the structural integrity of our houses through vibration of the soil. The same will damage the wells and septic tanks. We are concerned also about the effects of deforestation. Adding another corridor along the power line corridor will create a very wide bare area. Water erosion becomes a major concern. We also have economic concerns. The real estate property value will drastically drop due to damaged landscape and due to the proximity of a dangerous pipe. Our houses are also our retirement investments. Our families, my family, will lose about 5 years of retirement if the pipe is built. Approving the pipeline will force landowners to shoulder the environmental and property damage costs of building the pipeline. So we appeal to you. Please do not force us to subsidize a private pipeline project that raises so many concerns for our community. Thank you.
Irwin, E-A-R-L-E-I-R-W-I-N. I'm a landowner on
alternate Route 87 near milepost 216. I'm speaking on behalf of the waters of the United States, which the EPA and the United States Army Corps of Engineers have jurisdiction to protect via the Clean Water Act. This act protects our nation's aquatic resources, wetlands, and watersheds that drain to the nearest water, such as the Greenbrier, the New, the Roanoke, the James, just to mention a few of the waters that are affected by the planned MVP route. This act, the Clean Water Act, protects against any intrusions which significantly affect chemical, physical, or biological integrity. Disruption to this integrity of our water system affects groundwater and subsurface aquifers. The majority of these effects are not observable in the short term. They won't emerge for anywhere up to and over the next 57 years. Much of MVP's proposed route traverses delicate karst topography. Any disruption to this system literally will trickle down, actually at rather remarkable velocities. We easily can imagine that any compromise to the integrity of a working pipeline can and will seep harmful chemicals directly into the watershed, and that these chemicals eventually will drain into major waters of the United States. However, long before the first natural gas flows through any pipeline, the major construction, excavation, and blasting of rock will disturb this delicate drainage and our water-dependent ecosystem. Common sense and cited references conclude that major construction, such as that planned by the Mountain Valley Pipeline, through well-documented and widely distributed karst terrain in western Virginia and West Virginia, will have both immediate and long-term consequences that impact the waters of the United States. If FERC does not act to protect our waters, then the final authority regarding the Clean Water Act jurisdiction remains with the EPA, and they must act in the best interests of the public and our waters.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Hale, and I'm a landowner in Montgomery County on Coalbank Hollow Road. I'm concerned about the pipeline, and in fact, I just learned that my home was on alternate Route 87 in Montgomery County less than 1 month ago. Specifically, there is no mile marker for our property because we are on the alternate route, but I was told out front that we are directly south of mile marker 216. So during the same week that I learned that I was on this alternate route, CNN posted an article that Pacific Gas and Electric in California just recently settled a dispute for a natural gas pipeline explosion, which happened in 2010, the San Bruno explosion. So that natural gas pipeline explosion killed 8 people, destroyed 37 homes, and 50 people were injured. And it also resulted in a $1.6 billion settlement. Alternate Route 87 runs between my house and my neighbor's home. In fact, if the pipeline were to go in on that alternate route, the route would literally be 50 feet from my front door, which is very concerning for me. Being a young homeowner with my husband, we have equity in our home, and I'm concerned that a high-pressure natural gas pipeline 50 feet from my front door would significantly devalue our home. There are many things that FERC needs to consider before approving this initiative. Our road, Coalbank Hollow, which multiple people have mentioned here tonight, and the surrounding areas have a rich history of coal mining, thus the name. In fact, 15 years ago, a large sinkhole opened up in front of my parents' home, which also live on alternate Route 87 within Preston Forest in Montgomery County. I remember that effort because I was in high school, and it took a significant effort to fill that sinkhole. It's very likely that this was the result of possibly an abandoned mine shaft or karst in the area, also things that other people have spoke about here tonight. Further evidence to the mines and karst in our area are evident on my personal property. Since purchasing our home less than 3 years ago, we've had significant issues with our driveway washing out. Paving our driveway only helped the issue, but certainly didn't fix it. And even without multiple days of no rain, we can still hear and see water trickling down our driveway, which further concerns me, and I go back to the point of karst and abandoned mine shafts in the area. Personally, I'm unaware of any maps in existence that detail the mines in our area, which solidifies my concerns for...
Thank you so much for your comments.
Okay.
827 Bluegrass Trail in Newport, that's Whitehurst, W-H-I-T-E-H-U-R-S-T. I live within sight of the Newport Village Park. The park is designated to have the Mountain Valley Pipeline run directly through it. And as best as we can tell from what EQT has given us, the center of the pipeline will run right down home plate on the kids' ballpark. Now, this park is the center for many activities for our community. As you probably already guessed, they play baseball. We have about 70 kids that participate over the course of many weeks during spring, summer, and fall. There's a daily walking club. 4-H and Boy Scouts use the park. Families use it for a safe place to trick-or-treat during Halloween. Movies are shown there. It's used during our summer fair. It's used as a research park by Virginia Tech faculty to teach college students about rare limestone streams such as Sinking Creek, which borders the park on two sides. Our 4th of July festival is held at the park. There are many meetings that are actually held at the park. I personally go down there to listen to local music. There are many concerts over the course of the year. All of those concerts are performed by local musicians. Our children play there while the adults listen to the music and catch up on local happenings, such as pipelines running through the park. And I can walk to this event for if it just takes a few moments to walk down there from my house. The park's also used as a helicopter medical evacuation site. It's strategically located between the fire department and the rescue squad. And although it's not the only place that the helicopters could land, it's the most convenient. And when time is of the essence, it's the fastest place to prepare for a makeshift landing field. And this park serves an essential community need for that. And this park does fall within the classification of a Class 3 high consequence area per the Department of Transportation Pipeline Safety Standards. If you place the pipeline through the park, it'll pretty much destroy it. If you drill underneath of it, I wonder, you might save the park, but I wonder about my spring. I want to read into the record that there are multiple springs at 143 Caldwell Lane, and it services 3 residences, including mine, and I'm most worried about the water quality and what will happen to it. Thank you. Thank you so much for your comments.
I live on the preferred route in a really beautiful hollow just on the other side of the baseball field. You go over the ridge, which is Keister's Hill. It's an equestrian property. I have 3 horses. The name is spelled S-H-I-N-G-L-E-S, like the back disease. The proposed Mountain Valley Pipeline would come over the ridge and would directly in front of my house, and it would come down into the hollow, taking out the horse trails there, about 100 trees, and threaten the only spring in my property. If it were to come directly down, it would come right towards the house and the garage. But it doesn't do that, according to the map. When it reaches the top of that ridge, it turns, and it starts going towards the northwest, which is towards the red-covered bridge leading to my property on Route 601. I want to talk about that turn and the route it takes towards the red-covered bridge, because it's now, according to the maps, going at a diagonal across that slope, not coming right down the slope towards my house, but a diagonal across the slope. And everyone in Giles knows that anything that you put on a karst hill like that moves over time. We joke that the only thing we can grow in Giles is either grass or rocks, and you can pick the rocks up off your road or up off your field, and there'll be a new crop the next spring. So they're constantly in movement. One of the major reasons for this movement is that everything goes up and down in Giles, and there's nothing stable on the side of a hill. For example, if you build a straight fence, it ends up being crooked. If the foundations of houses built on the hill shift from underneath barns and houses. My house is a beautiful example of that. It's built on the opposite hill, looking directly where the pipe will be coming from. The living room has a large crack. I keep repairing it, and it keeps opening up again. That's because the house is no longer square. The sliding drawers in the kitchen open all by themselves. That's because the platform is no longer level, the foundation, and gravity opens those drawers. This puts me in a dilemma. Well, this creates a problem that puts me in a dilemma. The problem is that if that pipe is built at an angle to the slope, then all that loose rock, which is constantly in motion, is going to push up incessantly against that pipe, and eventually the weld's going to crack. And when the weld cracks, it's going to blow up. And so I can get to choose between one route where it might blow up and the other route where it goes through my property. Not a very good choice. There's another problem that for my property, it's really a box canyon. There's only one way out. It's very narrow. It's between two hills. And that pipeline will go right across the property and cut off the exit. And there will be no way for me to get it out during construction. The same thing happens to my neighbors, Pam and Susan, as well. There'll be no way out of their property. I did want to tell you that whoever designed this path is either a damn fool or a sadist.
Donna Pitt, P-I-T-T. I am a landowner in Giles County on Zells Mill Road. I'm here to express my personal disappointment to FERC over their history of deafness to the citizens to whom they should be responsible, while they pander to the private profits of the utility companies. I hope and expect you to do better in the future. Once this pipeline comes off the property previously described, its path cuts off the only possible entrance to a home in a hollow of my neighbors. It passes directly in front of two historic homes of my adjacent neighbors, one built in 1915, the other an original Sears and Roebuck kit home. These homes are the only assets of their owners, leaving them no future financial security for their senior years as they would become unsaleable. In one case, there will be no funds for the badly needed assisted living arrangements for elderly and ill owners. The original proposed path of the Mountain Valley Pipeline will pass directly across my property, bisecting the farm and rendering it unusable for the purpose for which it was purchased and has functioned for the past 42 years as a horse and dog breeding facility. The construction of the right-of-way will destroy a horse barn, a dog kennel, a greenhouse and garden, the well and water lines, septic line, and fences, and will come within 25 feet of my home. Any blasting and chipping used to build the trench will surely destroy our well. We will lose the investment we began when we purchased an overgrown and eroded pasture and turned it into a conservation area by planting 2,500 trees, filling gullies, clearing brush, and seeding rotational pastures. The buildings, improvements, fencing, and cross-fencing have largely been built by our own hands. There will be no financial value remaining to us and to Giles County if Mountain Valley Pipeline is allowed to destroy this farm. As construction of the pipeline will be through steep shale and limestone sparsely covered by grasses, it will generate considerable erosion, with runoff flowing into Clover Hollow Branch on our property, which feeds into Sinking Creek and then to the New River, causing sedimentation and pollution as it goes. The path will also destroy a seasonal spring that drains into Sinking Creek. The use of herbicides to keep the pathway clear will flow into the creek system, contaminating a vital source of water for irrigation, livestock water, and fishing. We have spent virtually all of our adult lives building a beautiful spot on which to retire. That retirement will not be on this farm, and the damage to the land will be permanent and not mitigatable. I sincerely and respectfully ask FERC to deny a certificate. This company has repeatedly demonstrated its...
My name is Joe Pitt, P-I-T-T. I'm presenting the words of E. Scott Geller, my next-door neighbor. As he says, first, in 2006, I gifted an open space easement of 45 acres to the Virginia Outdoors Foundation. According to our agreement, I'm allowed to make no changes to the 45 acres. They check my property annually to make sure no construction has occurred. Obviously, the construction of a pipeline on this property would be disallowed by the foundation. Second, the 1.5-mile smoke hole cave registered by the state of Virginia runs under my property and is used for educational purposes by students from Virginia Tech and many other universities. The pipeline construction would likely severely damage the cave, and entrance to the cave would be impossible. Tawny Cave and Smoke Hole Cave are designated by the Virginia Cave Board as, quote, significant caves. Third, pipeline construction would block the only possible entrance to reach an historical log lodge located at the top of the hill, which is used frequently for leadership retreats, weddings, and special group gatherings. The lodge is constructed of white oaks, circa 1860 or earlier, which frame an open space measuring 75 feet by 25 feet. This special indoor space is used for group meetings such as business improvement seminars that are crucial to my vocation and income stream. During the construction of the pipeline, it would be impossible to reach this building, and the back of the building is my residence and office. Thus, during the time of the construction of the pipeline through my property, this building would be unusable, and this would cause me substantial personal harm. There is environmental damage here. There's personal harm. It makes no sense. It's been said before, I'll say it again. It makes no sense. Thank you.
My name is John Hildreth, Hildreth, here representing Preserve Giles County. The proposed route of the pipeline crosses the Cecil Porterfield Farm on Cave Hill Road in Newport Giles County, which has been in the Porterfield family for over 200 years. Cattle graze the pasture and drink from the spring-fed stream that the pipeline would cross. The proposed pipeline would run within a few hundred feet of a family cemetery. But most troubling of all, the proposed pipeline would come within 300 feet of the opening of Pig Hole Cave. This cave has been designated by the Virginia Cave Board as a significant cave. It is protected by the Virginia Cave Act. Until the threat of the pipeline, species in the cave had never been documented. In the fall of 2014, a group from the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation conducted surveys of the cave. The biological inventory trip yielded the usual cave-adapted millipedes, spiders, beetles, and mites, as well as 2 distinct species of subterranean amphipod living in the cave. Both of these species appeared to be new to science based on this initial examination. Following the discovery, Dr. John Holsinger of Old Dominion University examined the specimens collected and determined that they are indeed new to science. Once this species is formally described, it will be added to the state list of rare species, which will bump the biodiversity ranking of Pig Hole Cave Conservation Site from B4 to B2. Another significant concern regarding the potential pipeline intrusion are Pig Hole Cave's 2 entrances. The first is a large opening that must be entered by rappelling. The second, located downhill from the first, may be entered by dropping down a short pipe. During the winter months, air flows aggressively into this lower entrance because of the chimney effect created by the higher entrance. Expert cave and karst assessment from the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation has expressed concern that because of this chimney effect, gas leaking from the pipeline down the slope of the cave could become entrained in airflow entering the cave and become concentrated within domes inside the cave. The cave receives significant recreational use on a regular basis, and an accumulation of gas would pose a risk to human health and safety. Caves like Pig Hole Cave have evolved over a natural process over the course of millions of years. The likelihood of this cave would be destroyed, or at the very least made too dangerous for exploration, is unquestionable. The fragile underground habitat would be destroyed. Once a natural cave has been destroyed or compromised, there's no way to fix it. EQT and NextEra have said that if they break it, they will fix it, but it is not a promise that can be kept when applied to this cave. When it's gone forever. Thank you.
This is Russell Chisholm. I live in Newport in Giles County. It's Chisholm. I will talk further tonight about one of this region's most precious resources, its caves, especially in the area of the small community of Newport. We are encouraged that MVP Resource Report Number 3, Section 3.3.2 acknowledges the unique characteristics of cave habitats and the specialized ecosystems that support underground life. The report mentions Tawny's Cave, a well-known cave with significant ecological and recreational value. Our concern is how briefly they considered and summarily dismissed not just Tawny's Cave, but also Smoke Hole and Pig Hole caves, all of them directly in the pipeline's path. And this despite written advisement on cave-related matters from the United States Department of Interior, Fish and Wildlife Service, the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, the Virginia Cave Board, and the Virginia Speleological Survey. We think it is important to emphasize some of the points these agencies attempted to impress upon MVP, who thus far has not given serious consideration in their narrative. First, bats and other wildlife. The Indiana and northern long-eared bats, both federally listed endangered species, are known to occur in Tawny's Cave. This prompted the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to recommend a minimum 5-mile buffer from the cave's opening and mapped passages. The current MVP center line passes directly over this cave. The Virginia DCR currently identifies 6 globally very rare cave-limited invertebrate species in the Newport area conservation sites. A newly discovered species in Pig Hole Cave will likely be added to the state list of rare species. Secondly, hazards to human health. The Virginia Cave Board recommends a 1-kilometer buffer around the Pig Hole conservation site boundary to avoid potential injury to cave users by pipeline-induced hazards. Significant land disturbances created by the pipeline can trigger sinkhole formation and potentially other catastrophic underground events, posing risks to individuals in and around these caves. Environmental concerns include watershed contamination by pipeline construction and maintenance in karst landforms along the MVP route, destruction of karst features, disruption of rivers and streams, erosion, sedimentation, chemical spills all pose real and significant threats. Directional drilling in these sensitive areas can discharge fluids which would contaminate surface and groundwater. Many of the cave sites have interconnected waterways documented by dye trace studies. Contamination in one location, even outside of the conservation sites, can quickly move into protected areas.
Thank you so much for your comments. Number 30.
B-E-R-R-Y. I live near milepost 205 to 211, depending on which map you use, in the Preston Forest area of Montgomery County. I bring comments as a landowner and on behalf of my fellow landowner and professor of geoscience at Virginia Tech, Robert Tracy. The original and alternate MVP rights-of-way incur significant local risks for 4 geologic reasons. First, karst. Much of Giles and Montgomery is underlain by limestone bedrock that is very susceptible to erosion and contains fissures, sinkholes, underground streams, and caverns. The dissolution of limestone causes the rapid movement of water from the surface downward and back again, as well as the mingling of waters from disparate locations. Any contaminant leaking from a pipeline would disperse quickly from the source of the leak and travel quite rapidly, creating an underground chemical plume, polluting extensive surface and groundwater sources, compromising wells, streams, and springs. Sinkholes can and do collapse without warning. Just last month, one collapsed on Interstate 81 and required closure. Construction activity to lay the pipeline would disturb this fragile bedrock and create the possibility for further catastrophic collapse. Secondly, seismic activity. The Giles County seismic zone is well identified by the USGS as an earthquake hazard and has had quite significant earthquakes over the last years with extensive local damage. It's interesting that we think about earthquakes in the western part of our nation, but they're actually mitigated in part by seismic fault lines. In the eastern part of the United States, we do not have such fault lines, and we can recollect the earthquake at Mineral in 2011, which shook gargoyles loose from the National Cathedral in D.C. and almost toppled the National Washington Monument. Thirdly, slope failures. There's potential for major landslide activity on karst soils and these steep terrains, mapped extensively by USGS and Virginia Tech sources, including a huge slide block over Sinking Creek Mountain, which is probably the largest slide block in the lower 48 states. The topography is the fourth geological risk factor that we have, and that has to do with the steepness of slopes, the likelihood of concomitant surface collapse, landslide, and erosion contamination of sensitive water sources. Blasting and digging is bound to create a disruption of these sensitive slopes, creating damage to local stream and river valleys. It's interesting to note that any one of these factors is significant, but they are multiplicative. When one begins to fail, successive failures may occur. Thank you.
Yes, hello. My name is Laura Berry, that's B-E-R-R-Y, and I live in Montgomery County in Preston Forest. It's been misidentified as Preston Farms, but I just have a couple remarks to add to the wonderful, enlightening remarks that have been made by my fellow attendees here tonight. Really, I want to identify a question that I came up in my mind when I started studying the plethora of information that's been coming out in response to the FERC comments on draft resource reports 1 and 10, and I've spent a good deal of time studying these, going back and forth, and I was intrigued by one thing, and that is in one of their tables, MVP says, identify by milepost all residences that would be within 50 feet of a construction right-of-way or extra work area. Well, in their table 8.2.2, the compliance report shows that there are no properties either in Giles or Montgomery County that fall within 50 feet of the construction work zone. Now, to me, that's really hard to understand because 125 feet is supposed to be the construction work zone. Otherwise, why are they wanting to come in and threaten eminent domain for taking our properties? My house is within 125 feet. 125 feet would put it right through the center of my house. And to me, 50 feet additional would be 175 feet from wherever this thing starts. So how are we to know what that point is? Another thing that I found is that when you have the reports from December from MVP and reports from March, there is a 7-mile discrepancy in the milepost markings. So how are we to know what we're even talking about when we're talking about environmental impact? I think that MVP needs to actually be accurate. I found many inaccuracies in MVP's compliance reports, and I think this is very serious.
Thank you so much for your comment.
My name is Keith Holt. I live on Ray Ridge Drive, Blacksburg. My last name is spelled H-O-L-T. I live in the Brush Mountain Estates subdivision. I reside there with my wife and children aged 6 and 1. Our property is 160 feet from the proposed pipeline route and alternative route number 3093. We oppose this project and its alternative routes. MVP has never operated a pipeline of this size and magnitude and distance. Given their way of haphazardly drawing out alternatives, we do not believe that they can be entrusted with transporting a hazardous material in this size and volume for which they propose. The economic benefit report for Montgomery County is frankly laughable. There is nothing in this for the citizens of Montgomery County. Due to the fact that our property is located just off of the proposed easement, we are not offered a sufficient voice nor have any bargaining rights with regards to this project's impacts to our property and lives. We are essentially left out in the cold with a potential danger looming over our heads. Like others, our well water is a concern. In addition to quality, I have great concerns over quantity, given the karst topography. If construction activities should shift underground water channels away from my well, I will end up with a dry well. The project will also greatly widen the existing power line easement that runs nearby, requiring the removal of mature trees, only a small portion which may be replanted with non-mature trees. This will result in a significant taking of our view shed. Those existing trees provide a natural vegetative buffer, blocking the view from the power lines and providing the wooded feel of our property, for which we derive a great deal of pleasure and property value. The needless taking of our view shed would result in the degradation of enjoyment as well as adversely impact our property values. Due to concerns of safety and the resulting risk for those of us who would be forced to live nearby to this pipeline, I request that FERC insist that the Department of Transportation's Pipeline Hazmat Safety Administration immediately get involved and evaluate the project's safety, and I request that local public hearings on safety issues be administered prior to FERC's approval of this project. This project has already caused undue stress for our family and needless loss to our property value. It is ultimately those of us that live close to the route that stand to lose the most with nothing to gain. I strongly suggest this application be denied. Thank you.
I'm Karen Ellingson. It's spelled E-L-L-I-N-G-S-O-N. I'm a homeowner in Preston Forest. I live next to an affected property. I don't know the lot. I don't know the mile marker. It's Pierman Road and Ballard Court. My comment is this: all pain, no gain. MVP will bring our region only pain and no gain. Gain, there are no plans in MVP's current FERC filing to provide access to natural gas to our region. The expense of a regulating station plus a minimum guaranteed demand makes such access unlikely. Pain, habitat destruction. The corridor is at least 300 miles long, 150 feet wide, and 10 feet deep, right through the forest of our region. All trees in the way of the pipeline will be permanently removed. In my 5-acre lot in Preston Forest, I count over 30 species of trees, 40 species of birds, numerous wildflowers, animal species, mushrooms, and a spring. That's typical for this region and a small sample of what will be lost. Pain, safety. All the routes for this pipeline go right over Sinking Creek Mountain. According to the USGS, this is the site of the largest known prehistoric landslide in eastern North America in the past 10,000 years. That's the USGS talking. Any pipeline failure could easily cause a major forest fire, multiplying the destruction. MVP is planning on conducting a massive clear-cut logging operation, excavation operation, and blasting through forest, farms, and residential neighborhoods. Our roads were not designed to handle heavy construction traffic. Landowners who lose property in new road improvements have not been notified, and their comments will not be heard. Environmental impacts will not be addressed. We rely on well water. We are guaranteed to have sediment in our well after this construction. We are lucky if our well survives at all. Recently hiked over part of the Appalachian Trail in Craig County from Kaffir Oak, the largest white oak in Virginia, to historic Server Cabin and Cemetery up Sinking Creek Mountain, close to one of the possible alternate routes. It is some of the most beautiful scenery in the country that we should preserve for all of the public, not destroy for the profits of a private company. All pain, no gain.
Okay. I am Carl Zipper from Blacksburg, Virginia. That's Z-I-P-P-E-R. The proposed location for the Swan Compressor Station in Montgomery County is inappropriate for that use. It is located within the North Fork Valley Rural Historic District as defined by the National Register of Historic Places. The proposed compressor is adjacent to the Virginia Scenic Byway, Route 785, which also serves as the Trans-America Trail for cross-country bicyclists, within a special project area designated by the Virginia Outdoors Foundation, and next to the North Fork of the Roanoke River, which is habitat for the federally protected Roanoke log perch at that location or a short distance downstream. The compressor station within an inhabited but quiet rural valley is with no topographic barriers for several miles, would subject residents to environmental noise and air pollution. There are no industrial facilities in this valley. The proposal is inconsistent with the current land uses, local zoning, and the Montgomery County Comprehensive Plan. FERC policies dictate avoidance of historic properties when possible and avoidance of unnecessary environmental and community impacts. A compressor station, A, is essential to pipeline operation, and B, creates a highly significant environmental impact. Knowing these facts and knowing FERC policies, a routing that places, an MVP has created a routing that places the compressor station in the North Fork Roanoke Valley. Is this the best the applicant can do? I state the above to emphasize that the applicant has not demonstrated a competence to perform impact avoidance and minimization routing. For just one example, in addition to many other examples that have been presented here tonight, based on what is missing from the December resource reports, it appears that the applicant performed the initial routing using maps from the 1990s. That outdated mapping did not show much of the current housing in some sections of the proposed route, such as Montgomery County. The applicant's proposal to place a compressor station in the North Fork Roanoke River Valley also demonstrates a lack of ability to perform avoidance and minimization routing as per FERC policies. The compressor station should not be placed in the North Fork Roanoke River Valley. The application should be denied. Also, the applicant has not demonstrated a need for the pipeline as documented by several citizens' submittals to the docket, and the application should be denied on that basis as well. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
My name is Sandra Schlaudecker, S-C-H-L-A-U-D-E-C-K-E-R. I live on Fortress Drive. My property abuts the 87 alternate route. There are 14 homes on our road. All of us have wells and septic fields. We are concerned due to the extreme steepness of the terrain. By removing trees and disturbing soil and rock, that our water sources will be compromised. Many people have spoken of the karst formations that we have, and we are part of that. We are also concerned that if there is an explosion or fire, that we might die. There is only one way in and one way out of our road. If that road is blocked by that part of the pipeline, there is no way that fire equipment or rescue equipment can get into us, and there is no way that we will be able to get out. I hope with all the soil and karst formations, caves, sinkholes, that you will reconsider running the pipeline through our area. All of the nice photos that you showed us earlier were on flat ground, and that is not what is on Brush Mountain. What experience does Mountain Valley have with the steep terrain, and what will be done with the trees? We hope that they will be taken away and not become fuel for fire. Thank you.
Mixon, M-I-X-O-N. I live in Roanoke County, and I live less than a mile from the Blue Ridge Parkway. Let me tell you the story of a real-world experience. My family has lived in Roanoke County for 27 years. The entire time, a gas pipeline has run through our backyard, up the hill from our home. About once a year, we get a mailing from the pipeline company reminding us to do or what to do in the unlikely event of an emergency. In 27 years that we've lived there, we've never had any problem with the pipeline. We hike up in that area from time to time, and it's a beautiful nature area. You would not know that a pipeline is there except for the occasional marking. All of us here tonight represent a fraction of the total population in this area, and I hope that everybody that has an opinion on this will be allowed to talk, even if they're not here tonight. I know the importance of having good jobs in the area. My son and daughter left the area after college graduation because there were not good paying jobs in the area. The pipeline will bring those jobs along with critical tax dollars needed by our schools and local law enforcement. It'll bring in more tax dollars without raising our taxes, and this is a good thing. We pay about $2.30 a gallon for our gas rather than a large amount like $5 or $10 per gallon that we would have to pay if we had to truck gas in or bring it in from the refineries by rail, all because people between here and the Gulf Coast were willing to allow pipelines for gasoline. And when I came in the parking lot tonight, I saw a lot of coexist stickers in the parking lot. I hope to see a scenario where the pipeline can coexist along with our natural environment. And I urge this board to vote yes on allowing the pipeline. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Okay, right now, I'm allowed to close this meeting. You are the rudest group of people I have ever heard. All right? I think you owe him an apology. Okay? Whoever is going to leave the room.
I didn't do it. Are you closing this meeting now? Is that what you're doing?
I'm about to, if I ever hear another reaction to a speech like that. I ask you all to show respect, regardless of what people had to say. You all want to say something, all right? You need to allow your neighbors and other members of the community to speak as well.
We expect the same in return.
Okay, would you like to leave now?
No.
Okay, then please be quiet. Next speaker is number 38.
It is the job of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to think carefully and critically about the energy construction projects that affect us all. Here in the beautiful Commonwealth of Virginia, we pride ourselves on small-town values and the natural heritage of the land. The land of the Jefferson National Forest, as well as our collective private property, has been handed to us from past generations. It is your responsibility to take the time to take a good hard look necessary to ensure these construction products do not significantly deteriorate our environmental heritage or our human health and safety. In the past several months, reading documents released by MVP and following the issue, as a recent graduate of environmental policy and planning from Virginia Tech, there is no reason beyond economic gain to the MVP company to build the state-long high-pressure pipeline. The intention of this pipeline is to sell natural gas to Europe. From our karst topography that geologists warn is too unstable to build upon, to the fragile and valued freshwater flowing from the Blue Ridge Mountains, approving this pipeline would have countless environmental and social consequences. The mountains of Virginia should be protected so students like me can learn and grow into leaders of tomorrow. Approving this pipeline would be a very poor decision. I would also like to mention that there are several nonpartisan representatives from the Pipeline Information Network created by students at Virginia Tech this semester. Their work all semester has created the most comprehensive source of information on this issue. You can go to pipelinenetwork.org for more information. They are going to quietly raise their hands at this time. Thank you. My name is Erica Largen, Largen. You're welcome.
That's Puckett, and I'm going to be as short as possible because I am literally at the halfway point. I'm the halfway point speaker. My comments pertain to the proper conservation of cultural and historical resources, primarily for Montgomery County. Others are speaking for their own counties, and my comments really build on Dr. Zipper's comments from just a couple of minutes ago. Our first and main concern that we have is in the proposed location of the Swan compressor station at approximately mile marker 220.5. This location is smack in the middle of the North Fork Valley Rural Historic District, a site on the National Register of Historic Places and therefore subject to NEPA regulations, despite or regardless of the fact that we know that one landowner is willing to sell land, to grant an easement to Mountain Valley. It is also, this site is also, or this district is also on the Virginia Register of Historic Places. Electronic comments have been made with respect to the historical significance of something like 195 structures within this 9-mile district and so on. But what I want to focus on in the little time I have is the significant prehistorical significance, and that the area is rife with Native American artifacts. The Shannon site, which is the largest archaeological site in Montgomery County, abuts to the southern end of this district. It contained over 100 Native American burials when excavated. Given the prehistoric value of this district to Native American transportation and settlement for about a mere 8,000 years, it is quite likely that the proposed compressor station, given the amount of land required, will encounter a major archaeological site and a possible probable set of Native American burials. The Commonwealth of Virginia recognizes 7 Native American tribes within the state. For this district, the Monacans have jurisdiction and have agreed to submit a comment to FERC before the June 18th deadline. We're going to try our best to hold them to that, regarding the potential disruption of their ancestors or the sacrilege of their remains in this site. We therefore encourage FERC to rigorously apply NEPA regulations to this site and this proposed compressor location. We also encourage it to move the entire route out of this vitally important prehistoric and historic district. A second concern we have will be submitting maps with locations of family cemeteries located on or very near the proposed route. One landowner commented on this earlier this evening. They must be circumvented by law or, if absolutely necessary, moved if the current route is approved. There are many in Montgomery County, and you will be receiving maps of what we have already, but we're also going to be asking landowners to submit their cemeteries as well. We encourage MVP and FERC to just service to our dead should one of the proposed routes be approved. Finally, a speaker last night at the Lindside Scoping and tonight as well mentions a study of the cultural importance of place to local residents, and that needs to be submitted as well. Thank you.
My name is John Brill, John Brill, from Roanoke. I've heard several various comments this evening regarding how the construction of this would disturb soil, would cut down a lot of trees, there would be a lot of runoff going into a lot of creeks, and how this would also disturb the view and our view of our mountains and so on and so forth. And I find that very interesting, and I would encourage you to take those comments with a grain of salt, and here's why. A couple of years ago, we had in Roanoke County quite a lot of public hearings regarding the placing of a bunch of windmills on our ridge lines. The construction of those would have caused a lot of disturbed a lot of soil, cut down a lot of trees, had a lot of sediment go into a lot of creeks, and it would have been an eyesore that you would have been able to see clear across the valley. So for those, and I bring that up because a lot of the people that I see here, some that have spoken, some have not, I recognize from those meetings where they were advocating for the placing of windmills that would have disturbed a lot of soil, cut down a lot of trees, put a lot of sediment in a lot of creeks, and been an eyesore across the valley. For myself, I look forward to the cheaper gas prices, cheaper energy prices that this gas line is going to bring. I'm looking forward to the jobs because I know that for my generation, a lot of people that are part of my generation, they've had to leave the valley in order for good jobs. I'm encouraged by the prospect of what this pipeline can do for our area. Thank you for your time, and you have a good day.
Cavell, and I'm an affected landowner living in Coalbank Ridge subdivision in Blacksburg, and I think it's near mile marker 216. I strongly oppose the Mountain Valley Pipeline for many reasons. Health and safety issues are foremost. But tonight I express my concern about the severe impact on the quality of the environment along whatever route the pipeline takes. I am all for cleaner energy sources, but not at the expense of the environmental wrath that would be inflicted by a 300-mile, 42-inch high-pressure gas pipeline. Just the land disturbance alone would permanently alter over 2,000 acres, while the actual impact would be immeasurably greater. Naturally, I am particularly concerned about land by my home that I know and walk. I share ownership with other homeowners of Coal Bank Ridge of a 90-acre conservation easement, one of the lands entrusted to the Blue Ridge Land Conservancy. As part of alternate Route 87, the pipeline would extend approximately 1 mile across this easement. The proposed pipeline would not just cross a narrow section of the conservation area, its route would cut through the longest part of the land, thereby producing the maximum disturbance. The conservation easement is lush with mature trees and wildflowers and provides shelter to abundant wildlife. On numerous occasions, I have watched baby fox pop in and out of their den. A beautiful stream, which would be crossed twice by the pipeline, lies at the base of a steep slope directly below the entire length of the pipeline path. Disturbing the mountainous land above the stream is concerning, but there has not yet been time to fully examine the potential impact on the watershed, which is a reason to extend the scoping period. It should be noted, however, that this stream forms the headwaters of Tom's Creek, which flows into the New River, our region's most precious natural resource. While beautiful and a valued amenity to myself and my neighbors, the conservation area would not be hospitable to a gas pipeline. The terrain is steep, rugged, and rocky, and possibly most importantly, abandoned coal mines lie beneath the earth all through the conservation area. Because it is protected, even I as an owner am prohibited from disturbing the land or vegetation. It seems ludicrous that this protected land is now threatened not only by a large-scale and permanent felling of trees, but by placement of a potentially hazardous and devastating man-made object.
Thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you.
Number 42.
Hi, my name is Stockton Maxwell. I'm a resident of the Preston Forest neighborhood in Blacksburg, and I'm a geospatial scientist by profession. I just want to sum up a lot of what I've heard tonight instead of provide more detailed comments. The proposed Mountain Valley Pipeline is unjustified in its current and projected demand for natural gas in the Mid-Atlantic region. While not explicitly stated by the company, the natural gas pipeline will go to the highest bidder, or the gas in the pipeline will go to the highest bidder and will likely be exported to Europe and Asia. Exportation of gas is not a public benefit, but a private gain for a corporation. The citizens are to assume much of the risk for the natural resources. Emissions from the pipeline and compressor stations are a threat to local air quality and the state and federal mandates to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Construction of pipelines threaten water quality, habitat and headwater streams, and pose risk to well water, especially in karst terrain. The construction of pipelines will impact the environment through loss of habitat, forest fragmentation, changes in species movements, and sedimentation. The Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation has identified a host of cave resources within 2 miles of the pipeline that will be impacted by the construction and possible methane leakage. The pipeline construction process involves techniques that will lead to erosion and sedimentation in headwater streams of the New, Roanoke, and James rivers. The construction of the pipeline will deforest over 4,000 acres along the pipeline route. The habitat loss and fragmentation will lead to biodiversity loss in Appalachia and beyond. In 2014, a report by the IPCC states unequivocally that global climate change is happening and that it's driven by anthropogenic emissions like greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide and methane. A recent study published in Science says that more than 25 to 75% of methane leaking from wells is underestimated, and this is going to erode climate benefits from burning methane, because methane is 25 times more powerful than CO2. The mitigation of these environmental impacts can come at a cost to the citizens. So ask, should we allow the continued subjugation of Appalachia for the benefit of a private company? Thank you.
Huber. I live in Preston Forest on milepost 214.9 and 215, right next to the power line. So I'm here as a mother of 4 children that moved up there 2 weeks before we got the first letter and the threat that they will take our new house that we worked so hard for and that we wanted to raise our children. I'm a biologist myself, so I encouraged my kids to invite all their friends over so we can explore and learn nature. And by now, we lived there now since half a year. There were more than 100 kids with parents up there exploring, learning, seeing what we have up there and what it's worth to preserve. If they build the power line, the pipeline, we won't get up there anymore because there's one street up, then there's the cul-de-sac, that's it. So I can't invite anybody anymore. We can't live up there anymore because our well is exactly 50 feet away from the power line. So if they follow this route, they will just dig through it and we're out of water and we have no place to live anymore. If they really build it, if for any reason somebody invents new water for us and we can stay up there, I will not invite anybody up there anymore because if it blows up or if there's any leakage, I will kill other friends, I will kill other kids, I will destroy other families, not only ours. Our property has a little creek in the middle, so we go down the hill to the creek and back up the slope. So these nice pictures with flat surfaces, that's not it. You go down on your bottom and you crawl up. You can't walk there. These are high hills and deep slopes. You have to blast through it. And okay, if you blast away our house, our neighbor's house, on the other side, all these houses will be gone because you can't just blast an 80 feet wide corridor because that's how far we are away from the power line. You can't do that. So you will destroy not only nature, but many, many, many homes, many lives, a lot of beautiful nature. And I don't know what the American dream is, but this is an American nightmare.
My name is Bill Seal, spelled S-E-A-L-E. I live in the Coal Bank Ridge neighborhood in Blacksburg, Virginia, roughly about 200 feet from the bullseye of Alternative 87. Prior to moving home to Virginia, my wife and I lived in San Francisco, and we remember vividly the drive home from work on September the 9th, 2010, and the dark, ugly, smoke-filled sky. According to the Pipeline and Gas Journal, on that day near San Bruno, crews were replacing a UPS when the pipeline control system malfunctioned. Electrical power dropped, causing the control valve to open and pressure to build, and at 6:11 p.m. it exploded, unleashing a 1,000-foot high wall of flames and excavating a crater 167 feet long, 26 feet wide, and 40 feet deep. Imagine 200 firefighters, 25 fire engines, 4 air tankers, and a helicopter battled the blaze for 18 hours, and days later they were still searching for human remains. In the final accounting, 8 people died, 66 were injured, 38 homes were destroyed, and 70 more were damaged. After the disaster, the former head of the Federal Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration called for the creation of a national commission to examine the problem of high-pressure pipelines that pass through residential areas. He suggested that we create a no-man's land around the pipelines or restrict lines of certain sizes from neighborhoods. And yet, while that San Bruno neighborhood is still trying to rebuild, here we are tonight discussing a pipeline with double the volume and nearly 5 times the pressure of the San Bruno line, one that would endanger every single home in our 52-lot neighborhood and many other neighborhoods in its path. Well, my wife and I are not agreeing to risk our lives. And none of our neighbors are agreeing to risk their lives. I'm urging FERC to reject any alternative that forces people to live in the blast zone.
My name is Steve Cass, C-A-S-S. I'm a landowner at about 218, 219. My comments tonight are related to safety, and safety primarily during construction. Because of the current AEP easement, the location of the AEP easement, and my property, it appears that the center line of this pipeline will be less than 100 feet from my house. The movement of heavy equipment will make access to my home extremely difficult, if not impossible. The blasting of huge rock formations along this route will not just cause a noise disturbance. My septic system, home foundation, and well are all at high risk for permanent damage. The current, it also will cross my driveway, which is only accessed by vehicle. During construction, access to my home by emergency equipment, including fire and EMS, will undoubtedly be extremely restricted. The high potential for spilling of diesel fuel and other petroleum products is of great concern. The proximity of this pipeline will place my family at high risk, high danger during blasting, ditching, and heavy equipment usage within feet of my home. MVP should be required to assess the proximity of homes. It is not just my home that I talk of. A simple Google search of 5 minutes will locate over a dozen homes along the pipeline that are less than 100 feet from the center line of the pipeline. This seems to be a ridiculous way to run a company. Thank you.
And I reside in Franklin County. I am a landowner that's affected by this proposed pipeline, approximately milepost 260. Our farm actually has 2 creeks on it, Teals Creek as well as Little Creek. Teals Creek flows into Little Creek, and Little Creek flows into the Blackwater River, which is the town of Rocky Mount's water supply. That is my first environmental concern. Our family farm is one of many properties that are affected by the proposed Mountain Valley Pipeline. Since October of last year, our family has been shaken and stirred by this potential impact to our land. We have spent much time researching the many issues surrounding pipelines and conclude without any hesitation that we do not want it built, period. Natural gas is not natural. It is not clean energy. The devastation that would occur on our land through creeks and woods is horrifying to us, let alone the mass disruption of the myriad of species that inhabit this area. We moved here just over 4 years ago to farm and to work on healing the land using sustainable restorative practices. My family lives here, works here, and plays here on our land that we respect and care for. We make our home on this little piece of earth, along with all the others in the path of this proposed monstrosity of a pipeline. When will the environment and property rights be a priority for living and breathing landowners? Stop the use of eminent domain for corporate gain. You know, sometimes after I've been outside, whether working in our garden, exploring the land, or playing in the creeks with my 4 children, I come home and I find dirt under my nails or in between my toes, and I look at this as a sign of a blessed life. Dirt. My dirt. Mountain Valley Pipeline has no interest in my dirt or the animals we raise and the wildness of the woods surrounding our creeks. Their interest is solely in moving fracked gas from point A to B and making as much money as they can doing it. The environment does not need more of this gimme extraction mentality. Look where it's gotten us. Climate change is real, and we must stop the pipe lies. And I brought some friends with me. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sherry Perdue, S-H-E-R-R-Y, P-E-R-D-U-E. My husband and I, along with our 2 children, are residents of Montgomery County. Our home is located on West Benoit Trail in the Preston Forest area of Blacksburg. Alternative Route 93 is slated to run just outside the boundary of our property, placing our home well within the blast zone. I'm also a small business owner. My husband and I are partners in a consulting company headquartered in Blacksburg. Our company offers consulting services in industrial and occupational safety. For the past 20 years, our company has helped hundreds of organizations around the world understand and manage risk in order to keep their employees and their surrounding communities safe from industrial accidents. The 7 members of our team routinely travel from Blacksburg to areas across the United States and around the world, including Europe, Asia, Africa, and Australia. Our clients include familiar names such as ExxonMobil, Toyota, 3M, Pfizer, and Monsanto. I share this information to help put my next comments into context. If the pipeline goes through the proposed route, I will be hesitant to continue to live and raise my family in my home. We all face various levels of risk every day. If anyone understands that, I do. I make a living helping organizations and their employees understand and manage risk. The key, of course, is to manage the risks to an acceptable level. A natural gas pipeline has inherent risk, but in many cases, those risks are well understood and can be acceptably managed. I do not believe, however, that a pipeline of this size running through this portion of Montgomery County carries an acceptable level of risk. The many threats to personal safety and to the environment, which have been well articulated here tonight, are simply far too great. If the pipeline is approved, my family is prepared to relocate. And we'll relocate our small business, taking with us the over $2 million annual taxable revenue to Montgomery County. I realize, of course, the insignificance of this amount of revenue, but it's just one additional negative impact to the region. The economy of our area will suffer, along with the environment and the welfare of the residents. I implore you to deny the MVP pipeline access through this region.
Martin, J-I-M-M-A-R-T-I-N. First, I want to thank the folks from FERC for hosting this meeting in our area tonight and for giving us the opportunity to share our views about this project. To be clear, I am a supporter of MVP project, but I did not come to this position without a great deal of thought. I don't think any honest person can truthfully say that this project offers zero benefits or zero risk. It is likely a combination of both, so the best way for FERC to evaluate the merits of this project should be to identify the benefits and risk and decide which outweighs the other. For me, the benefits are both socioeconomic and environmental. In terms of socioeconomics, pipeline construction will generate lots of jobs and opportunities for local workers and businesses in the area. And operation of the pipeline will generate tax revenue for Southwest Virginia counties. Because I live in Salem, I'm most interested in Roanoke County, which will receive anywhere from $1.6 to $2.7 million in tax revenue for every year the pipeline is in operation. That's an enormous benefit for our community. That's money we can invest in our children's education, transportation needs, and funding for public safety. This pipeline also gives our region the chance to attract economic development to the area. Manufacturing is the future of the U.S. economy. It disappeared overseas for decades, but is finally coming back to this country because of affordable natural gas. And it's improving the lives of middle-class families all across the country. I think the folks in the Roanoke region ought to be a part of that, and I think our neighbors in Franklin County should too. This pipeline gives us that chance. In terms of the environment, by any standard, natural gas is an environmentally beneficial form of energy. It is helping our nation reduce our carbon footprint and is dramatically improving the air and water quality in our communities. For all the talk we hear about wind and solar, natural gas has actually been the largest contributor to the decrease in U.S. carbon emissions in the last 10 years, not renewables. I know folks are concerned about environmental impacts locally, but haven't seen a single environmental impact that cannot be solved through technology and best industry practices. Natural gas pipelines are the safest form of energy transportation, and they coexist peacefully with the environment all across this country. Sure, there's karst topography in the area, and sure, that's an engineering challenge, but there are thousands of miles of natural gas pipeline in this country that operate safely through karst areas, including in the Roanoke region. The East Tennessee Pipeline has safely operated through karst areas in our region for decades. I know folks are concerned about the Spring Hollow Reservoir, but again, the industry knows how to build and operate pipelines so they do not harm the water supply. Some folks may not be aware of this, but the East Tennessee Pipeline actually goes directly underneath the Spring Hollow Reservoir, and there it has operated safely for decades without any adverse impacts to our water quality. It can be done, and it is being done in our region and across the country. In closing, I think this project offers our region some significant environmental and socioeconomic benefits, and they far outweigh the risk. I hope FERC will consider this benefit. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. I want to say, again, that there are some very rude people in this audience, all right? Because people, you don't agree with their views, does not mean that you have the right to intimidate them, all right? So I would like you to show either common courtesy or please leave the room. What's our next number?
I'm Noah Tickle, Catawba Magisterial District Rep. Why are we, the people, participating in this rally for a pipeline? That's what this is. We are being carroted, baited in. This picture is the wrong framework, folks. This is a deception to counter landowner rights of property, landowner rights, grace of God given unalienable rights, Bill of Rights, Fourth Amendment. Why do we not understand this? Why do we allow being deceived into the weeds? Spine up now, assert your grace of God given natural rights. The pipeline should buy land if they need it, not use others. When this fracked compressed gas runs out, the pipes will be deserted. Their bags full of money, they will run. Landowners giving way will left this with empty bags. If they own the land, they will have to deal with that. If this happens and after the frack runs out, they should be required to remove the pipe and put the land back as it was. They do not want that. Government's coming after them, they do not want. Using your land, they have no problem. You do. It's on you. This is a first of a monster pipe filled with high pressure gas, 42-inch diameter, 2,000 to 3,000 pounds pressure, moving through the pipe at approximately 30 miles an hour. This is an accident looking for a place to happen, folks. Put this natural resource in railroad tank cars, trains on rails, as if a pipeline moving along the rails, and much safer as they've been doing for over 155 years transporting oil. Railroads are here already, manufacturing double and triple hulled cars for safety now. Well over 1/2-inch steel plate double triple, having no effects on our landowner property rights, no effect when transported by rail. The rail will move on, having no effects after it's over. Assert your landowner rights now and before it is too late, for they will have governments violate our God-given landowner rights. We will be left holding the bag, empty pipe, devalued land, etc. God save us.
Thank you and good evening. My name is Gene Rose, that's G-E-N-E-R-O-S-E, and I'm from Roanoke County. I'm a member of the Roanoke Appalachian Trail Club and often hike the AT as well as the Carvins Cove area. In 2011, I bicycled from the south terminus of the Blue Ridge Parkway at Cherokee, North Carolina, to the north terminus of the Skyline Drive at Front Royal, Virginia, almost 600 miles. Both the AT and the Blue Ridge Parkway are going to be crossed by the Mountain Valley Pipeline if it's approved. Many say these pristine views on the AT and the Blue Ridge Parkway will suffer dramatically. I disagree. On my hikes, I see 100-foot-high electrical transmission towers, clear-cut fire trails, roads, and railroads. Our area is beautiful in spite of these signs of civilization. The pipeline won't change that. How many pipelines crossed the Blue Ridge Parkway during my ride? I don't know. They were buried. And I had a beautiful ride in spite of those pipelines. More importantly to me is the positive economic impact of the Mountain Valley Pipeline in our area, our state, and our country. Just last decade, we were sending billions of dollars a year to the Middle East for petroleum when we were sitting on so much oil and gas in the U.S. that we could have been energy independent. Some said we were fighting wars for oil, yet many of these same people are also fighting to prevent the U.S. from becoming not just energy independent, but a net exporter of oil and gas. This pipeline will help us become energy independent and create good-paying jobs now and in the future. Increasing production of these resources will lower the price of heating our homes, driving to work, and running our factories. The air quality in our valley will also improve when over-the-road trucks and school buses are fueled by natural gas. The pipeline will also result in fewer fiery train crashes. The pipeline is the safest way to transport natural gas. I would like to see the swift approval and construction of this pipeline. Thank you very much.
My name is Carol Crutchfield, C-A-R-O-L-E-C-R-U-T-C-H-F-I-E-L-D. I live in Franklin County. I'm a member of Preserve Franklin. However, I'm here tonight to talk about my personal experience. I live on the Blackwater River. I'm not sure where the mile marker is, but I live just downstream from the junction of the Blackwater River and Magadee Creek. The pipeline will cross my neighbor's property near that junction of the creek and the river. I'm appreciative of the opportunity to come and express my concerns tonight. Thank you for that. My primary concern is regarding the danger this project presents to the groundwater. My home is well within the 1,100 feet of this pipeline. That means I'm within the blast zone. Reportedly, the pipeline trench will be backfilled with coal fly ash, which is known to contain multiple deadly toxic substances, including arsenic and lead. Once the fly ash is in the ground, those toxins will continuously leak into the groundwater systems, and they cannot be removed. Therefore, contamination of any associated wells will be irreversible. Water is essential to all life on this planet. Clean, potable water is more precious and more valuable than oil or gas. We can develop alternative sources of energy to meet our needs, but there are no alternatives to pure water. Since any groundwater contaminated by the pipeline project may extend beyond the parameters of the project easement, many more people are at risk than just those on whose property it will be built. A large population living along the pipeline corridor depends on wells for their household water, especially in Franklin County. Not only is there great risk to the health of those families whose wells are contaminated with arsenic and lead, but their properties will be rendered uninhabitable and therefore devoid of value. This pipeline has the potential to create a 300-mile-long Love Canal scenario in which hundreds of families must be relocated. Clearly, the cost of the physical and financial well-being of the citizens far outweighs any economic benefits the pipeline may bring. As currently proposed, the only assured beneficiaries of this project are those individuals who have invested in the pipeline companies. For the above stated reasons, I respectfully request that the application for construction of the Mountain Valley Pipeline be denied. Thank you.
AMO, I'm a Roanoke County resident. I came here tonight to go on record in favor of the pipeline. The reason is that we definitely need energy independence for the country. Since 9/11, we've lost thousands of lives defending overseas to protect our energy interests, and those lives, to me, were wasted unnecessarily when we have all the resources we need here in the country. We just have to develop the infrastructure to use those resources that we have and stop losing the lives of some of our young men overseas. It's ridiculous. We've got a VA hospital in Salem that's full of the debris that's left over from those wars, trying to protect our energy. And we've got tons of energy right here in the United States. I support the construction of this pipeline and any other mining or drilling or transportation that it takes in order for us to become energy independent. I feel very strongly about that. And all of these other people that are talking tonight are just selfish, not in my backyard. They're not thinking of the thousands of lives that were lost overseas. Thank you.
David Brady. I'm from DAVIDBRADY. I'm from Giles County, Clover Hollow, in the Greater Newport Rural Historic District, and I've come to talk about 3 specific scoping-related issues. The first is the cumulative effect on historic resources in Southwest Virginia. The area of potential effect will be set by FERC and this in consultation with the state historic preservation officers. And that area of potential effect needs to be expanded to address the impact on historic resources in Southwest Virginia. There are a total of 7 rural historic districts in Southwest Virginia. This pipeline will cross 3 of them for a total of 8.5 affected miles. And what is potentially many, many, many additional historic properties within the rural historic districts themselves that are listed as contributing properties in all 3 historic districts. To give an example, the Link covered bridge, it also affects 2 of the 8 covered bridges in Southwest Virginia, are within 600 feet of the proposed pipeline corridor. The Link covered bridge and the Sinking Creek covered bridge being 2 of the 8 in Southwest Virginia. It dovetails into the question of credibility. This is an actual issue. I think it needs to be a scoping issue, is the credibility of the contractor's environmental assessment. When I encountered them first, it was their first resource report they issued last December, and they identified the roads in Giles County and got 40% of them wrong, including a state road, because they'd used such out-of-date maps. That, by the way, has not been corrected or amended. The second instance I encountered was Cultural Resource Report 4, where they misidentified the entrance into the Rural Historic District by a half a mile. You're half a mile into the Rural Historic District before they started identifying, and that's actually Resource Report, I guess, 1 maybe. The third case that I've encountered is that they did correctly identify the Virginia Scenic Byway, Route 42, the Bluegrass Trail, and they indicated that it would have moderate visual impacts if someone was driving in excess of 45 miles an hour. The problem is the speed limit there is 45 miles an hour. The third subject that I want to talk about is areas of high cumulative effects. There are areas such as Greater Newport Rural Historic District, there are others, where there are cultural effects, recreational effects, and historic preservation and environmental effects. The 3 significant caves that have been previously discussed, the rare and biota in those caves, all of these impacts need to be considered. Yeah. Yes, we will.